Uh, Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are, or good night. Thank you for joining. This is our first Beneath the Impact webinar series. We are very delighted to have you here. Right now, I believe you're a bit anxious, so just in case you see myself or Njagi sweating, I think it's the first time. And and also thank you for joining us and giving us your time. We really appreciate. So basically, maybe I'll start by introducing Beneath the Impact. So Beneath the Impact is an initiative by Yeba Impact that hopes to leverage storytelling to disseminate research and also research findings mostly, especially within the social impact space, whereby we transform the research and lived experience into compelling narratives that shape development practice across Africa. So to learn more about Beneath the Impact, you can go check our website. It's www.beneaththeimpact.com. One word, Beneath the Impact. So today we are honored to have a creative force, or rather one of the most creative people I know around here, whereby to tell us more about how does storytelling and how it intersects between culture and influence. So let me introduce to you Brian Njagi, who is a decorated creative director with over 50 accolades in 12 years of advertising. So he has led our doing work for global brands such as Netflix, Airtel, WWF, Total, and Coca-Cola, as well as major Kenyan brands, including ABL, Tusker, Safaricom, and Coco Networks. Also, he's a founder of Tuali for Birds, which I believe they have a show upcoming. He can tell us more about that. And in case you don't know about Tuali for Birds, it's a powerful storytelling platform that reclaims and retells Kenyan history through performance, reshaping how we understand identity, heritage, and narrative power. So Brian is also the first African representative on Dori Youth Committee, where he helped develop Rewrite Story Checklist, a tool that designed to challenge stereotypes in advertising industry. We are excited to have him today, and and I'm looking forward for the discussion as well. Let me have a brief about the structure today. So currently, we are to do a 3 minutes introduction session, which I'm concluding now. Then Brian will deliver a 20-minute presentation, after which we shall open the floor for a 30 minutes Q&A, where you can engage with Brian with more questions and reflections about it. Also, we shall have a short poll during the session, so please participate when prompted to help us shape the future conversation. So you're encouraged to post your questions on the chat as he goes through the presentation, so that at least we can also address them during the Q&A. Yeah, and looking forward to the discussion. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Dennis, for that introduction. Allow me to share my screen. I'll also go off video so that the bandwidth is not affected by the video plus the screen sharing. So I think Deno has done a great job introducing myself, so I won't belabor the point anymore. Let me get straight into it. So I hope in this moment you can see my screen. So today we're looking at storytelling and how it's going to be impacting our lives. The objective of this session is ideally at the end of it, we can all be better storytellers. And every day I'm learning to tell stories better. It's something I've been doing for a long time. And in the image, you'll see something that probably defines us as human beings. It was many, many years ago, millions of years ago, we got to be separated from our closest cousins, the apes. And if you think about it, the one thing that separates human beings from our cousins biologically It's mostly communication. It's how we pass messages. It's how we communicate. It's how we talk to each other. It's how we listen to each other. Ideally, the biggest separator or the biggest separation between being a human being and being another A is our story. It's the story we share and the story we tell. And for that reason, we wanted to learn how we can do storytelling, but not just storytelling in any sense, but according to our apes. And you may wonder why you're doing storytelling according to apes, because if you're able to tell a story that an ape can understand, then, oh, sorry, stop sharing by mistake. If you can tell a story that an ape can understand, then ideally you're on a winning path. It means your stories are able to be understood by any human being that ever encounters your story. So storytelling according to apes then becomes our rallying call today. Like, how do you tell stories like human beings, but how do you tell stories that apes can understand? So what's in a name? When you think about a name, when you think about your name, what does it tell about us? Because in most situations, when you're telling a story, stories are comprised of many words. So if you think of one word in a story, how much are you able to carry from that story? And my background is actually, I do a lot in advertising. Advertising is my daily bread. And in advertising, what we've come to learn is to be able to tell stories in the fewest words possible. So we've come to value the weight of a word, because every word you take out or every word you add to an ad should be weighty enough to be presented there. So what's in a name? For example, my name is Njagi. And when I think about my name, it carries a lot of meaning. It carries a lot of weight. If you know me, or if you know people who come from where I come from, then this name usually will come with a lot of stories just by itself. This one name. From my name, you can infer a lot of things. And a few things you can infer is my geography, where the name comes from. That thing on the wavy thing you see on top of the eye, it's called a tile. That tile implies geography. If the tile is only used on those who went to schools where in the Morema areas, you had A, E, I, O, U, then you had A, O. So there were 7 vowels around that people. So the Kikuyus, the Merus, the Embus, a bit with the Kamba, but not so much. They use the A and the O, which is an I and the U with a tilde, right? So you can imply where I come from. The name also implies Bantu, because Bantus have that kind of syllabalization. My name means zebra, which implies that back in the day, when you got named after an animal, it was your parents trying to confuse evil spirits, because it would have meant there was a kid who was born before you and they had given them a normal name like Kamau. And when Kamau died, maybe when he was 2 months old, they figured, okay, there's an evil spirit here who's hunting for our kids. So the next child who was born, they would get an animal's name, so that when the evil spirit comes around, they're like, it's just animals around here. They're no people. Yeah. And Njagi, it would imply east of Mount Kenya. So this is a simple introduction of myself, word to what Deno had said. So even for yourself, when you think about yourself and the organization you represent, what does the name you carry as an individual and the name your organization carry, what does that mean? Tell. So I'll give you an example. Well, currently I work in a company called The Bar. That's my 8 to 5. The Bar is an advertising agency. And every time we introduce ourselves to prospective clients, it usually gives them a pause. What do you mean The Bar? Is it The Bar ya Uji ama The Bar setting the bar? And usually say it's both. It becomes The Bar ya Uji at 5 p.m. on a Friday, or between Monday and Friday. It's The Bar setting the bar and raising the bar. So that's what a name can carry. And therefore, every time you introduce yourself as an individual, every time you introduce your organization, try to imagine what your organization represents, and your name can become the first part where your story is told. So this is for you to self-reflect. What does your name tell us about you? When you think about your name, the first time people meet you, what does it say about you? When you go to meet sponsors, clients, funders, and you name your organization, what does it say about you? So today when I hear beneath the impact, already I can tell there's something about impact, and there's something that's beneath. Or is it not above? Or is it not above the impact? Or is it not besides the impact? Or is it not diagonally to the impact? Or is it beneath the impact? Why does it have to be beneath? And what is this impact that we are talking about? So those are questions you have to answer every time you meet people. And remember, Do not always assume people know about you. Always always take the opportunity to tell your story every single time people get to meet you. So that's some self reflection you can carry out. So why do you tell stories? Why do we as human beings why have we evolved over these thousands of years to become expert storytellers? We could have continued living like our fellow apes, enjoying fruits, nuts, um, no, no, no corruption, maybe, no political violence, maybe. Yeah, life would have been easy. No capitalism. Imagine a life without capitalism. So why do we tell stories? Because if there are no stories, there wouldn't be any capitalism. Because no one knows how to sell a MacBook computer by saying how amazing it is. You know. So why do we tell stories? There are many reasons why we tell stories, and you can also share this on the chat. You can one word answers. Why do you think we tell stories? I'll tell you a few reasons. What are the motivations for storytelling? Yeah, you have examples where we see that human beings will tell stories to convince someone to do something. So send me money, I show you where the bananas are. That's a trade-off, right? Stories help us make sense of the world. They are memory tools. If I'm trying to remember something, if I'm trying to map my world around me, stories are going to help me do that. The emotional maps. The best way to tap to someone's emotions is through a story. If you're trying to make someone angry, someone happy, someone sad, and you can relate to this because sometimes I know you get home and you're tired. You're like, I just need a movie to uplift my mood, right? So you put on a movie and you find the perfect movie to do that. And sometimes there's a movie that will be on your watch list, but you won't watch it because you haven't found the right moment for that movie. Because in that moment you don't want your emotions to be taken to a certain direction, right? So that's what stories be. Ultimately, it's also social glue. When you tell stories, people gather together. They want to listen to you. They want to talk to you. But at the same time, people just want to share stories. They want to share the emotion. They want to share the gossip. Yeah. That human beings and gossip, you're entertained. Even anyone who says they don't like gossiping, whenever a good story is being told, they have a type of gossip that they listen to. Everyone, regardless of who they are. No one is gossip free in this world. Unless you're an antisocial human. As long as you're a social human, then the gossip, the story has to be part of your life. Yeah. So let's start with a story. Let me illustrate storytelling by telling you a story and how we can then become better storytellers. It all starts with a lab. And in this lab, a bunch of monkeys were put in, 8 monkeys to be specific. And in the middle of this lab, a scientist was trying to understand monkeys a bit better. So he put a ladder. And on top of this ladder, he put a bunch of bananas. And I'm sure you all know what would happen in this situation. If monkeys see banana, monkeys want banana. This has been time old conclusion. Whenever monkeys see a banana, they want a banana. So the monkeys see the banana, they see a ladder, and they're like, voila, we can actually get bananas. So the monkeys start doing their thing. So a monkey starts climbing the ladder to go get the bananas. Monkey number one. As he climbs it, a robot appears with a stick in hand and smacks the monkey. Okay, so monkey number one figures like this robot doesn't like me. So monkey number two is like, this is my opportunity. I'm going to have all the bananas to myself. So monkey number two starts climbing, and when he starts climbing up the ladder, the robot appears again, smacks monkey number two, and this happens to every single monkey. And suddenly, they quickly learn that you cannot climb the ladder to get the bananas because if you try to do it, Mr. Robot will come and smack you. And what they do is they start policing each other, right? So every time monkey number 4 starts to climb the ladder, monkey number 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are like, bruh, we won't let you do that because we like you and we don't want to see you get hurt. So we're going to not let you climb the ladder. So soon enough, they're actually self-policing themselves. There's no robot in sight, but there's no monkey climbing the ladder either. The bananas stay up there. At the end of the week, the scientist replaces the bananas, and that goes on and on, right? So soon enough, none of the 8 monkeys ever attempts to climb the ladder. The ladder is there, the bananas are on top, but the monkeys, by this time, they know if I try to climb the ladder, I'll be smacked. The robot will make my day terrible. So I'd rather just get the bananas that the scientist means. Those bananas at the top of the ladder, let's leave them alone. And the scientist then adds another twist to the story. So what he does, he takes one of the original 8 monkeys out and replaces that monkey with another monkey. So we still have 8 monkeys, but there's one new monkey. So this new monkey comes on and he's like, hello, you guys don't eat bananas here, what's going on? So he sees the ladder, he starts climbing up. And as he climbs up, the other 7 monkeys, they gang up on him. They tell him, bruh, Here, we don't climb ladders for bananas. That's not how we do it here. So they sit down on him and they thrash him a good one. Yeah. So this monkey quickly realizes there's no point. If I try to climb the ladder to get the bananas, I'll be smashed. So let me not do it. So the scientist replaces another monkey with a second monkey. This second monkey, of course, will also try to do the same thing. He gets there, he's like, this guy here are surrounded by bananas, but none of them is having them. So, of course, he tries to climb. Again, all the 7 monkeys, including the one that just arrived 2 days ago, set on him, right? So they beat him a good one as well. They thrash him and he realizes, okay, so I guess here is no eating bananas on top of ladders. Understood. I won't have the bananas on top of the ladder, right? And this happens until every single monkey that was there from the original cohort of 8 is replaced by 8 new monkeys. Yeah. All of these 8 new monkeys have never seen the robot. They've never been beaten by the robot, but none of them ever attempt to climb the ladder. At this point, they have learned. If you try to climb the ladder, you get beaten. Yeah. And therefore, bananas, top of the ladder, do not touch. Bananas on a plate, we touch. That's how they conclude. And for them, they live with that legend of the robot. They've never seen this robot, never had it, but they have that legend of a robot that will come and beat you a good one. So that becomes the lab's moral of the story, right? So what you learn from all this very short, simple story is that for chimps and apes in general, bananas are a big thing for them, right? So to entice a chimp to do something, if you want a chimpanzee to do something for you, put a banana and they'll do it. Yesterday I had one, because I have dogs as well, and I was trying to get my dogs to get into the house, and there was a fully around, and just like, get a piece of ugali and he'll follow you. Similar thing, right? If you want your chimp to follow you around, give them a banana. I'm sure you've seen the videos on TikTok. But to provoke your chimp, hit it with a stick. Yeah. If you don't want the chimp to do something, they learn very quickly. If a stick hits me, then I'm not supposed to do it, right? And that's human nature as well. So from this story, you can start then unpeeling the banana, so to speak. Let's unpeel the banana to unpack what the elements of a good story are all about. And this is what makes a good story, the elements of a story. The first thing you have in a good story is a message. What lesson or truth are you trying to deliver? Yeah. Many times when someone is trying to pass a message to you, you'll be like, so bro, I was passing by Ngara and there's this underground tunnel. And when you're passing through this underground tunnel, you were set upon by like 5 guys and they beat us. And that's why I have this scar on my face, right? And therefore the message becomes, do not go to that Ngara underground tunnel, right? And for the longest time, this is a true story. I never, even today, I don't, if I see an underground tunnel in town, I don't use it, because the first time I came to CBD, I was told, bruh, never go to those underground tunnels. They're full of stuff. I do not want to confirm for myself, but since other people have confirmed it on my behalf, I'll believe them. And this was told to me through a story, right? So the message, what lesson or truth are you trying to convey? If you have a message or a truth that you want your funders, your impact beneficiaries, you want them to understand, how are you conveying that message to them, right? So you have to diffuse your message to a point of them being able to understand that this is actually what I'm being told to do. This is a message being passed along. The second thing you have is conflict. The conflict is that tension. Like in our banana story with the monkeys and lab, the conflict was, you climb the ladder to the banana, you get beaten. That's the conflict. That's the tension. So quickly the tension becomes, do not try to do that, right? And in Kenyan speak, when someone is trying to introduce the conflict, the tension, they're like, bro, they will insist, wait, wacha nikuambie. When you hear that, okay, things are about to get real, right? The conflict is about to get to a new level. So for you as well, as you introduce your conflict, make sure it lands when it's supposed to land. Make sure you introduce it in a way that your recipients of the story are able to understand it, appreciate it, and then absorb it, right? Number 3, you have the characters. In a lot of stories, if you have the greatest characters, they can really carry a story. And I'm sure this, again, let me use an example we are probably all familiar with. Sometimes if you're trying to find a movie or a series to watch, you'll be like, okay, if Viola Davis is on that movie must be really nice, right? And just because Viola Davis is there, she will carry the character to life. At the same time, the flip side, if the same story was given to a character who's weak, or someone who can't carry that character well, you may not watch that movie the same. Yeah. So, and again, secondly, you have characters in mind. There's in characterization, a lot of times in storytelling, you have a hero and a villain, right? So as you try to characterize your story as well, what's your hero? And a lot of times in our cases, when you're telling stories, you want to do the heroes of the story. For us, you're coming to rescue kids who cannot afford school books. So we are the hero. The villain is the lack of school textbooks, and also sometimes you can also have multiple villains. Why don't they have school tech? Maybe because the schools just cannot afford it. Maybe because the school principal is using school money. Maybe because the parents do not have disposable income. Maybe because the government has not sent money for schools for books to be bought. So the villains can also be a lot. You can have same case. Heroes can also be multiple heroes. Sometimes you want to go and find a partner to work with you in your impact journey, right? That becomes your fellow hero, your fellow Avenger in this story, right? So your characters have to be very clear. What's my role in the story? What's my intention in the story? And then you shape your characters to make sure that they bring that idea, that essence to life, right? So that's number 3. Number 4, you have the plot. The plot is possibly the most underrated part of any story, but one of the most important elements of any story. Because the plot, what you're basically asking is, what actually happened? You know, and there's many ways to tell a story. And I'll show you one that's very the classical way of storytelling, right? But in the plot, what you basically ask is what happened from point A to point B. And that's the journey you're always taking your storytelling audience through. There was a point A where things were like a certain way, and there's a point B where things changed in a certain way. Every story must take people through change. If there's no change, then a story feels meh, you know? So we will be like, okay, if nothing happened, then why are we watching this story? That's why sometimes, again, let me use movies and series again, because that's where you all congregate. Someone will start a movie, and 10 minutes in, you're like, okay, this movie is not going anywhere. Let's find another one, right? That happens a lot. So again, even with your story, movement has to be almost immediate. Your conflict has to land almost immediately, because if you delay it for too long, people lose interest. And today, in the time and day and age we're living in, I don't know how many of you right now on your phones, because the day and time and age you're living in, people are usually distracted by their phones, they're distracted by their TVs, they're distracted by their laptops. So every single time you're trying to tell a story, make sure it's as engaging as possible, so that from the get-go, the plot captures them, entices them, and just then captures them, to make sure that every single time that you have them, they're paying attention, you're grabbing their attention, and you're keeping it, right? So the plot has to do that. Then you have, those are like I almost added a few which does not exist. But those are the 4 elements of a story: the plot, the character, the conflict, the message. You bring those 4 together, and you now start seeing how the banana starts to make sense. So the banana is basically you showing them what they want. The banana is usually it could be the message, because that's what you're probably trying to push along, or it could also be the conflicts, because in some situations, the conflict can be the message, right? And sometimes they usually intertwined. So the banana is showing people what they want. So in my impact story, if I'm trying to change narratives, if I'm trying to change behavior, what is it that people want? And sometimes it's never as obvious as you think, right? I'll give you an example. One of the campaigns one of my colleagues worked on was called Less or Lessons. It was a campaign where there was a situation where women, especially those who are in rural areas, are not able to afford messages or learnings on the best practice for raising children who are between 0 to 24 months old, basically 0 to 2 years old, right? The obvious answer there would have been, let's print pamphlets, leaflets, let's put notice boards, let's get doctors to talk about it, right? That's the obvious answer, and yes, superficially. But what they brought together was the idea that you can find these lessons, which a lot of women carry their children around them. They carry lessons, and they carry the children on the lessons. So imagine the lesson being the thing that now becomes the message, the carrier of the message, right? So the message then comes in the lesson. Yeah, so the lesson became the medium that they used. So the pamphlets, the leaflets, then in that situation are now put aside. So that's how the message was carried along. So use the stick to warn people about what they fear. And the fear is one of the strongest emotions you can ever have. If you have people who are around you and use fear can be used the right way, but also a lot of times used the wrong way. So if you're trying to pass a message, you can also show people what they do not want to face, right? And that's what a lot of insurance companies do, which works for them sometimes. And also a lot of impact storytellers also do, right? You'll show people, if we don't get a borehole in the next 6 months, due to the current droughts, 10 Kenyans might die, right? That's using fear. So you can also use fear to make sure that you're passing the right message, but also to transform behavior. Use a mirror to make it personal. Basically, have a moment where people can self-reflect and see themselves as part of the story, right? We've all you may be as rich as possible or as poor as possible, but the human condition is the same. We've all had moments of being frustrated. We've all had moments of being disappointed. So if you can find similarities, parallels between people, show them that this story you have, this notion you're living through, it's not unique to you. It's unique to other. It's a human thing, right? And you're not the only one living through it. To make that story personal. Tell me that me as Njagi should care about Karo, who is in Busia. What are the similarities? Or both of us are Kenyans. Both of us have ambitions. We all have dreams. We all have desires. Then it becomes a personalized goal, right? So, in summary, understand your target audience's problem and their pursuit. What's their banana? What are they trying to reach, right? And once you understand that, you propose a path. A path basically is, how do you get there? How do I get you a banana? Yeah. So you have to get the banana, package it, and suddenly you can buy it from the supermarket. Yeah. Then you paint the picture. What does the dream or danger look like? Make sure it's very vivid. Like it should be something that's so clear. Like if we start telling me the story, use a lot of adjectives, descriptors to make sure that when I see it, when I visualize it, it comes to life. And that's why our ancestors loved proverbs and idioms, because with proverbs, we can summarize a lot in one statement. With idioms, I can say she was as beautiful as a mango in January. Like if I know what a mango in January looks like, I can already visualize her, and I can visualize that skin, and I can visualize where she comes from. So you paint your pictures vividly and make sure that people can understand where you're coming from. So getting into practicalities of now telling a story. How do you tell the story in a practical sense? And this is what I spoke about. So there's always something at stake in every story. There's always something you're trying to overcome. There's always something you're trying to solve. There's always something you're trying to deal with. And that's the stake. Yeah. Whatever is at stake is something that you are bound to lose or you are bound to gain. If the stake is unresolved, someone gets hurt or something gets lost. If the stake is resolved, someone gets happy, something gets gained. So you always have to ask yourself, what is the stake? What is that thing you're trying to solve? What is the stake in this story that you're about to tell? So let me give you a very simple, classical storytelling format. Yeah. Every story usually will begin with normalcy. And you've seen this in a lot of stories. Disney is amazing with this, right? We all grew up with stories like this. This is the classical storytelling formula. You begin with normalcy or abnormalcy in this case, where you feel like something is abnormal, right? And that's usually how stories begin. And that's when they hook you. They're like, okay, a typical city or typical situation. Or like Star Wars, where they begin and they're like, in the year 5055, or plateau of the universe of blah 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 did blah blah blah. They've told you this is either normal or it's abnormal, right? Then once you have your normalcy or abnormality, conflict. And with today's time and day, like I said, conflict used to take, like, let's say in a movie, it will take 20-30 minutes to come. These days, the conflict is probably landing in the first 30 seconds. I'm sure you've noticed that, where the Hollywood has also figured, for me to capture your attention, I have to do it immediately, right? So conflict is when a stake is introduced. Something is about to get lost. The planet is about to be obliterated. A huge flood is about to come and wipe all of us away from the face of the earth. Kids who do not have school textbooks are about to be kicked out of school because they cannot learn. These are the kind of conflicts, the stakes that are being introduced. Then you get to the middle. In the middle, you're trying to find a resolution. Okay, you've understood that floods are about to come. What do? Do we build a dike? Do we build a levee? Do we, I don't know, find planes to blow clouds away so that you don't have rainfall falling? Like, what's the resolution, right? And that's usually the middle. People trying to figure things out. They're like, okay, it's brainstorming sessions. In our case, in an impact story, it would be a brainstorming session. It would be a workshop where you're trying to be like, okay, we have all these problems. We need a resolution. And that's why you come up with a solution. And you're like, okay, now I get it. What we need to do is A, B, C, D. Now, once you do A, B, C, D, what would normally happen in a lot of storytelling situations is the conflict will get worse. Just when you thought things are getting better, things get worse. It's Game of Thrones, the Starks being killed. Mr. Stark, I forget his name, being killed, right? You thought, okay, things are going normal. Suddenly, people are dying. Or the Red Wedding, suddenly people are just being killed left, right, and center. And you're like, okay, something has shifted. And it hasn't shifted in a polite way, it has shifted dramatically, right? So also this happens a lot in real life where you're trying to solve a solution. We probably think that the solution is buying school textbooks, and therefore you take school textbooks to a school. But you get there and the principal is like, no, 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 no. We do not take school textbooks from outside. The parents are like, no, no, no. When you think we can't buy school textbooks for ourselves, now you're stuck with your school textbooks. So what do? Your conflict has intensified. You just go to the school, pick up full of textbooks, and you need to deliver them somewhere, right? Your conflict has gotten worse. You thought your problem was school textbooks, but now you have the textbooks, you're in debt because you bought the textbooks from someone who gave you money, who loaned you money, and they still have to go. So that now the conflict has gotten worse. And that's usually the juiciest part of any story, when things get intensified. And the end usually comes with us trying to find a resolution, right? And in the end is when now you finally figure out, okay, with these school textbooks, I kind of blah blah blah, or now that the stacks have died, we can find other people to conjoin with, or now that there's a drought or a famine, you can talk to someone to help us find new mitigations for drought tolerant plants, for example. So that's when you have your happily ever after or unhappily ever after if you have not been able to resolve your conflict, right? This is the typical storytelling format, and it's one that you can always depend on to tell a story. You forget everything else about storytelling. Remember these three things. Always show more than telling. Yeah. Make your story be more visible than audible. People prefer hearing things with their eyes more than their ears, right? That's what I'm trying to say. So show more, tell less. View more, speak less, right? So use visual devices, use videos, use graphics, use illustrations, use all these things. Then the storytelling becomes a bit easier to absorb. Because also in situations where you're dealing with the masses, not everyone reads the same way, not everyone reads as quickly as the other person. So what you basically need to do is find visual aids to help them understand the story. Number two, evoke emotion. Like we said, if you're not able to tell why you're listening to a story in the first few minutes, people will move on. And they only move on because the emotions are not going anywhere. Maybe even making them depressed. They are happy, but now they're feeling depressed because of your story, right? Or they feel like your story is not moving, so they're just stuck. So make emotion become a big thing for him. Like trigger a switch, trigger a fire in them. Like let there be an emotional upswell when they listen to your story. Keep it simple. The best stories are the ones you can detail in 2 minutes. Elevator pitches are an actual be. I'm sure everyone who's ever tried to find funding or spoken to donors, the simpler the story is, the better. If you can summarize your story in 1 page, and I would have given you an example, but I knew today you are limited on time. I'll give you an example which you can go look at later. Airbnb, when they got into the market, they had a 12-page pitch document. That's what they were pitching to VC funders in San Francisco and wherever the rich millionaires of the US live, right? 12 pages. And they explained their problem very succinctly. It was, people have extra rooms in their houses that they don't use. Thousands of travelers go to hotels and they find them too expensive. So what if we could get these guys who have houses in their houses rooms that they don't use, get travelers who are looking for cheap accommodation, they come together. And then they showed the numbers. They were like, it's going. This was the banana now for the panda. The banana was, if you invest with us, the projected market is going to become $500 million in the next 5 years. Currently, we've done $50,000 so far in the last 6 months. So if you're a founder, you're like, okay, that's the banana. That's the banana. I see it, and they go quickly and grab to it, right? So that's how simply the story was told. So even for your, and I'm saying this because I know, especially for people who deal with NGOs, people who deal with governments, there's a propensity to try to be complicated with numbers, data, statistics, right? We die on that hill where we are like, if I do not overcomplicate and complexify the information, people won't take me seriously. So you try to throw in all the data, the numbers. By 2025, 70% of Kenyan consumers will be doing 95% of 9 to 5s. And therefore, we need to target NSM 6 to 7 to make sure that it's 5% of the consumers who are in the ABC1 section. By the time someone is listening, done, absorbs, they have no idea what you're talking about, right? So let your stories be simple, be understood, and be easily absorbable. So if your team can feel it, so will your audience. And let me give you a simple metric for how you can start using this going forward. So these are storytelling moments in your impact journey. Usually in your impact journey, you have conceptualization. This is when you're trying to imagine, visualize what you're trying to bring to life, right? Once that's happened, once you visualized what you're trying to bring to life, your storytelling comes in to convince people to get on board, right? So your storytelling is a tool of conviction, right? It's convincing them that this is the problem, this is what I'm visualizing in my mind. I've seen that I need to grow 1 billion trees so that you can slow climate change. Then you tell the story of how this farmer in China has been growing 10,000 trees and the village is now feeling cooler. Bad example, but you get the point. Then you get to the second stage, which is creation. Now you're doing the actual thing. You've gone to the to KFS and they're like, okay, we have pieces of land for you to plant trees. Go ahead and do it, right? So you start doing the thing. And I'll tell you again using what we do for Too Early for Birds. So for Too Early for Birds, when you're trying to tell our sponsors, our partners about what we do, we summarize what usually is a 200-page story into 2 paragraphs. It's called a synopsis, right? I'm sure all of us have seen synopsis before. In the creation space, you're trying to get people to comprehend. So how do I make sure you understand? Again, this is where the visual aids come in. Use images, use illustrations, use videos. Let people see what you're trying to say. So once you convince them, they comprehend, they understand. Then it gets circulation. Now you're taking it out to either your funders, you're taking it out to either your consumers, to your audience. Now you're circulating it, right? Once you circulate it, your storytelling then in this case is helping you to create advocates. People then begin understanding, they emotionally connect with your story. If someone emotionally connects with your story, suddenly they become advocates. Yeah, they're not waiting for you. And this is something you also see in marketing where good stories sell themselves. And you have a thing where you say organic reach. Organic reach for us is when we are saying people believed in our story so much, they were sharing on the Instagram, they were sharing on TikTok, we were sharing on WhatsApp. I did not have to spend a lot of money on it, right? Because they become advocates. They're advocating for the same thing you're advocating for. And that's because they've emotionally connected with what you're saying. So that's your story emotionally connecting with them. And then finally, what usually happens at the tail end of your storytelling journey, at the tail end of your impact journey, is your case study. And your case study is essentially you then summarizing everything you've done into one simple, simplified document. And your case study then becomes a tool for you to get more people to understand what you do. So at the end of this conversation, for example, at the end of this session, Dennis can create a case study of the Beneath the Impact webinar, right? And say, look, 50 guys joined, 2 questions were asked, 20 guys shared this link, that becomes a case study. Then at the end of the video, we can have someone like Tony making a video saying, oh, look, I joined the Beneath the Impact webinar and I got impacted by Njagi. No one has ever inspired me like that ever again. Bruh, the next time you see a Beneath the Impact webinar happening, please sign up quickly because it's going to change your life. That becomes your testimony. And that finally then begins the loop again, all over again, right? So you close the loop with the case study, then you begin again conceptualization. And with this very simple structure, you can begin to have a thing that you use every single time. It becomes your Kenya when you're trying to figure out when do I tell a story, how do I tell the story, or what and what's the objective of my story. And with that, allow me to close our storytelling session for the day. And I hand it over back to Dennis to, I guess, gather questions if there are any, or feedback from you guys.